It may be good. Let's pick that.
That's different and understand, because as Dick Gregory used to say, grandma has to be put into that mix of what is wrong with our health, because grandma learned that all that stuff was good to eat, and she fed it to us. And when we go to her house, she baked us some cakes and cookies and what have you. Well, we don't criticize her for that, but when we know better, we have to do better. It's going to be able to change grandma, but let's do what we can with her. And one of the things, as you said, is to call her and to talk with her, but not argue with her.
You know, and I agree with that. I think that there's a way, but I think that you know, if you really think about it, Dr. Warren, shouldn't the pastors be the one? Because people are led by their leadership in the church. Shouldn't the pastors be the one to explain this and help the church evolve so that they understand that you know, that you can still have the purity of your religion and do it in other ways? I mean, is that not the responsibility of church leadership?
Yeah, I agree. And I think we should seek out the pastors, the faith leaders who have a perspective. And I think, you know, the church is hierarchical. Pastors say do and you do. But I think we need to seek those who have a different view of how you practice your faith. I think we ought to talk about the difference between religion and spirituality. Now, that's practice. And once we have that conversation, then we can come to some conclusion and trust the folk to do better if they know better, and not to embrace a dogma that said, do because I said do, not because it makes good sense. We can interpret the Bible for ourselves. That's what we have historically done, and that's what we ought to do. Now, talk to grandma quietly and listen to her, and you'd be surprised how much you'll learn.
It's interesting.
We assume grandma is not going to listen to us, but grandma will listen to us. It's the way we talk with
Absolutely.
Grandma. Sometimes younger people have a way of saying, oh, that's not true, or that's old fashioned, or what have you. We can't talk to grandma like that and get her to listen to what we have to say, or to listen to our points of view, because we know that grandmas have our best interests at heart. They may not know the best way to do it, but that's information we can provide to grandma too.
Yeah, and I'm a granddaddy, and I know about that too. That's right. So
yeah,
talk to me the right way.
You don't look a day over 30.
That's right.
you know, it's interesting is that we have to do things in love, and I agree with you, Dr. Warren, that you know, it's and Dr. Williams, you both of you, I'll say, it's not always what you say, it's how you say it, right? It's not always what you do, it's how you do it. But when you are in a crisis situation like this, sometimes just being nicely saying things does not express the sense of urgency, you know. I you know, let me tell you, when I found out that, and people are listening to me in Pensacola, Florida now, but when I found out that there were certain churches still having their church services on Sunday, I really got angry. I really did. And I had to really compose myself before I went on radio, because I did not want to use emotions to express how I felt. I wanted to express it in a loving way, but at the same time, let people understand how serious it is that we engage in social distancing for survival purposes. This is a matter of life and death. This is not an ideological kind of esoteric conversation. This is life and death, that grandma need to understand that too, right? And so we need to say it with some level of urgency. When a house is on fire, you don't just say, Dr. Williams and Dr. Warren, you know, the house is on fire, and it would be good if we left out at some point. Wouldn't you think? That's not how you say when the house is on fire. And so, Dr. Warren, I'm saying the house is on fire. And we need to say that in a way that people understand this is real.
Yeah, I agree. Say it within the context of love, which is a different kind of context. And love is urgency. Love is power. But you have to say that in the context of the circumstance. Let me deal with comment you made about social distancing. I heard a couple of folks on the TV the other day talk about the difference between social distancing and physical distancing. And there's a difference. And I think we've got to promote physical distancing, being apart, from social distancing. And the social distancing can happen in a lot of ways. We can get on the phone, we can get on the YouTube, we can do all those things to bring us together in a both spiritual and psychological context rather than distance ourselves. That's outside the context of the African American experience. So while we have to be distant physically, we do not have to be distant socially. I think that difference needs to be made.
Right.
I learned a lot, Omar, from Dick Gregory, and one of the things he would always tell me is to say things so your grandma can understand them. So we're saying, well, maybe grandma doesn't understand how this is, but I'll bet you if you speak to her in a language like, well, grandma, remember when people had tuberculosis and we couldn't be together because we were afraid we would catch it? Well, this is one of those situations now. It's just as serious as that. But if you name some disease maybe that she doesn't understand, then it's not as meaningful to it. And I don't mean to be picking on grandma. I'm saying we have a responsibility to speak in a language that grandma can understand.
The other thing too, Dr.
That's the level I'm talking about.
Yeah, but the other thing too, and I don't disagree with you. In fact, I agree both of you all. But we have young people who have this notion of invisibility, who are going out and saying that they're not going to change their behavior because it's not going to impact them. In fact, somebody said that young people can't get it. Now we see young people dying from it. So it's that it's not just older people. And you know, we could use grandma as an example, but it's the entire, you know, church from young to old, that many of them are defying the notion that this is a serious virus that can take you out within weeks.
Yeah, and if we want to place blame, I think we need to go back to, you're talking about the pastors, because grandma does listen to the pastor. The pastor can be 30, 40 years younger than she is. The pastors are the ones that we need to spend some time maybe educating on, being, you know, told what they must do and how they are misleading the people if they're not practicing that social distancing and not advising their people to do it. If they have church, yeah, grandma probably is going to be there. So it's the preacher's fault then if they hold those services, encouraging people to come together when we should be staying apart. So we place a big responsibility, as the brother here said, the church and historically Black colleges have, those are respected you know, businesses or what have you in our community. We should be looking to them for guidance right through here, and they should be giving it.
Dr. Warren, you want to say something?
Engage in leadership. We've got to engage in leadership. I'm in contact with the Macon County Ministers Council regularly. In fact, I have a conference call with the president today, and we engage the conversation. And when you get to that one-on-one conversation, there's no disagreement. Maybe some strategies that we differ on, but the principle of the love for our people is there. And so I'm not trying to defend or justify. I'm saying we've got to engage them in a way until they meet the needs that our people have.
You know, one of the things, is there any universal message? I mean, the point of the matter is we can't just rely on a Dr. Rueben Warren or Dr. Faye Williams. You know, we got to have more voices out here. And this has to be, you know, universal. It has to be a universal voice that says, this is not good for us, and this is what we need to do. And I'm not hearing that kind of universal voice. Yes, people are doing it in pockets, but we have to have critical mass if we are to, in some way, stem the tide of death associated with this coronavirus and the Black community. We got to have a stronger voice, and it has to be universal. And yes, I appreciate, Dr. Warren, you're talking to the ministers in Tuskegee and Macon County. I appreciate that. But we got ministers all over this country, and many of which are not hearing that message. And that's a problem.
You know, it takes courage. Yeah, it takes courage to do what you're saying. There are some people who think that, well, if I do this, or if I go against, if I say something different, make people uncomfortable. They're not going to like me. Sometimes as a people, we get too caught up in whether somebody likes us or not. We have to have courage to do the right thing and not care whether somebody's going to like us or not. If we know in our hearts this is the right thing to do, we need to provide knowledge, and particularly our people who are so highly and so well educated. They need to use that education for something, for just such a time as this, because we are losing too many people. Every time I turn on the television, I hear more Black people. 73% of our people in some places where we don't have nearly that a number of people are having this coronavirus, Milwaukee and Louisiana and other places. We need to understand that something is not going on there. We need to get leaders out there who are not, and not just the ones who live there, but all across this country who know the truth and know what is good now and know what our people should be saying. It makes a difference sometimes who says what as to whether we follow it.
Yeah,
the messenger is as important as the message. And I would argue, Omar, that you got a ministry. You're getting the word out. So what you're doing, particularly with the use of social media, is phenomenal. So use your service, if you will, as a ministry. And I think it'll go a mighty, mighty long way.
And we have to remember that syphilis is not the only thing that we've had a problem with somebody from the outside encouraging us to do the wrong thing and then making a bad result. Dr. Warren, you probably remember the Henrietta Lacks case.
Absolutely.
What happened with that? So when we listen to a president who is telling doctors and others to use certain kinds of medication that were not designed for this coronavirus, then we have to keep in mind we've been given the wrong advice before. And that's why I said we have to be particular about to whom we're listening and know what their past is and whether they've had our best interests at heart. I know you know the case of Henrietta Lacks.
Absolutely.
A woman who now what they did to her were terrible things, but it saved a lot of people though now, and she never got credit for that before. But her body was experimented upon, and now we're being asked to experiment with a medicine and being told what have you got to lose? We don't need to listen to anything like that. We need to listen to people who know and people we trust.
Let's talk a little bit about clinical trials, and that Black people have not been engaged in clinical trials at the level of other people and we do have a difference in our, construct of our DNA construct and how our bodies respond to various diseases. And so when you have such a systemic distrust in the healthcare system, you don't engage in those clinical trials. Now, sometimes they don't come to us to try to see how we react so that they can come up with medicine that will be beneficial to us. But we don't engage in them when they are available to us. What can we do to change that? Because if we don't do that, then no medicine will help us because, we are not involved in the process. Dr. Warren.
We just completed some research in a national study looking at clinical trials, enhancing African-American participation in clinical trials. We've completed the work in 2017 and published it. And what it really said is that you've got to develop trustworthiness before you can ask for trust. And it is not, if the outcome of the research doesn't benefit the folks that look like you and act like you, then what is the value of doing it? So when you look at health disparities and they continue to broaden within the African American community, and it suggests to us that the clinical trials are not doing any good. But if we must be involved, but we must be involved with conditions. Because if we're not involved in the clinical trials, drugs and the therapies that result that we buy and use are really an experiment. So we got to do it, but we don't have to do it unconditionally. We're launching a similar study in Alabama around this whole idea of xenotransplantation. So we got to engage, but not without knowledge and conditions. It's just a proposition we must do. And last and most importantly, the researchers in leadership role have to look like us. That's the notion of trustworthiness.
I often wonder, Dr. Warren and Dr. Williams, how much do the government talk to you when they're trying to fashion some kind of message to the African American community? And how much do they engage you in one giving you information as to where they are going, and asking you to speak to our people, because you have established, you have a cachet of goodwill that you've established over years, and so there is a trust that we have with you. And why aren't you talking to us on a national level, not just on my show, but on other shows? I don't see folk look like us who speak like you on national shows. I don't see that. I see the same people basically, no matter what the subject is. You got basically the same people trying to weigh in on those because that's what they have available to them.
Mm-hmm.
Well, absolutely, and you can just talk about surveys, just simple surveys on anything. You don't get the calls. I know I've studied a lot of things. I don't know everything, but I know a lot of things. But I have already gotten a call asking me about anything when a national survey is done. And I don't mean just in politics, but I mean many subjects we don't get asked. So then it becomes our responsibility to do like what we're doing. We have the shows that our people listen to. When the word out there, the word gets around. Just as I was saying the other night, Dr. Muhammad was on, more than 2,000 people came on that call and just broke the system down, because there was so many hungering for information. But we also have to insist that we don't necessarily listen to those stations that don't bring our people on. There are very few of them we'd be listening to. Well, what do we do then? We have to listen to our stations where we and what they are to us. And we don't support those stations and up their numbers when they don't present things that are in our interest.
Similarly to our institutions, we've got to, yes, I may be an African American operating in a vacuum, but if I'm an African American that's a part of Tuskegee University, as a part of Meharry Medical College, as a part of Howard University, I have a different level of accountability. So I think we need to connect the individual to the institution. A colleague told me that well-published, well-recognized scholar, he said, when you're at an institution that's not trustworthy, then your trustworthiness becomes questioned. So look at where I am as well as what I say.
Wow, that's deep. Let me say a few more things because we're coming up on a hard stop. Right now, Wisconsin had yesterday an election in the middle of an epidemic, a pandemic, right? Forcing people into being in proximity to each other, which is contradictory to and antithesis of what they're suggesting that we do, which is social distancing, to skew the election. I am afraid that this pandemic will be leveraged in a way antithetical to our self-interest, to the interests of Black people in this upcoming election. How can we fashion ourselves and posture ourselves where this does not work against us? Dr. Warren and then Dr. Williams.
Most importantly, I think, is to acknowledge with full force that we've got the power. It's critically important to know that. And then to translate what we do that serves our best interest, in opposed to spend our time negating or debating what others are doing. See, we've got the expertise, we've got knowledge, we've got the resources to do the thing that's in our best interest. And I'm convinced that if we do that, then the difference will be major. So yes, there's a contradiction, but we don't have to live in that contradiction. I think that we've got the responsibility and the authority to make a difference now and in the future. So I'm
okay.
Well, I think one of
Dr.
the things
Williams,
we have to do is not just throw
What you say, Dr. Williams? You froze on me a second, and go ahead, Dr. Williams. Go ahead.
I was going to say we cannot just throw up our hands and ask or say there's nothing I can do about it. On yesterday, Joe Simon and I initiated register our people online. We have a telephone set up so that people can call in, can go to a computer. We know everybody can't, but at least we don't have to stop registering people because we can help them, walk them through the process of voter registration. I think many of the current politicians, just like that court yesterday, want to see us forget about registering people, forget about getting to the polls, but we can't give up. We just have to study and find ways to get around whatever the challenges are. And so we hope that people will take Joe Simon voter registration online project that my organization is working with him on.
Well, I'd like to thank both you, Dr. Warren, and you, Dr. Faye Williams, for being on the You Got the Power show. It's always good to have this kind of conversation with thoughtful, insightful people. It's important that we get to know the truth, because the truth is liberating. Ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. And so, therefore, our freedom is associated with knowledge. I want us to know this, that these are some critical times, and it's going to require extraordinary action on our part in terms of self-discipline. We're going to have to eat better. That's one of the things that I want us to focus on. How am I taking care of my body and the bodies of the people to whom I'm entrusted with, my children, my family?
Mm-hmm.
How
don't forget exercise.
And exercising and drinking water, right? And all of the things. I mean, Dr. Warren is a vegetarian, so he's been thinking about this a long time. I mean, what do you consume? Because what you consume has all to do with how your body handles it and how healthy your body is. I want us to be mindful of that so that we love ourselves in all of our parts. I want us to, during this time, I want to impress upon you, this is to the churches and all of the institutions that are listening to me, to engage and to promote social distancing, or as Dr. Warren said, physical distancing, because physical distancings are different from social distancings. I can be socially connected to you and physically distant from you. So let's restructure this concept and say physical distancing for this moment so that we can protect each other. It doesn't have anything to do with how much I love you or want to embrace you. I just got to embrace you from another angle and from another way.
Right.
All right. So those are the kinds of things we want to do. Again, Dr. Faye Williams, the president of the National Congress of Black Women. Shirley Chisholm was founder and the first president. And this we have this her successor on this program. It is so wonderful seeing you, Dr. Faye Williams. You know how much I love you, and the work that you and Dick Gregory did was extraordinary. So keep up the good work, and I remain perpetually at your service. Dr.
I love you, and keep on letting us know we.
That's right.
Absolutely. And Dr. Warren, you know how much I love you. When you came to Tuskegee, I said, I don't care where you were born. When you came to Tuskegee, you just made it home, right?
And I've been there ever since. That's
Absolutely. So Dr. Warren, who is the director of the National Center for Bioethics and Research in Healthcare at Tuskegee University. So it's good to have both of you all on the show. As always, we want to tell you, I got a book that just came out. In fact, Dr. Faye Williams is in this book as well. Yeah, love is the answer.
And so are you.
Absolutely. Both Dr. Williams and I are contributors to this book. And so we want you to pick up the book. We're going to put it up on Facebook so that you can pick up the book. AJ Ali and just 29 other contributors just did a phenomenal job in putting this book together. And so love is the answer, how you can put principles of love into action to build a stronger police community marriage. And of course, this is the book and it's out, and we're really happy about that. Well, the clock on the wall says time for us to giddy up out of here. I'd like to thank you for joining with us on this segment of You Got the Power. As always, I'd like to leave you with these two words. Remember that I love you with a perfect love. But more importantly, remember this: you got the power. We'll see you next week, same time, same station. Have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.